So, dear Karl, 2 years since the inception of Memoriam have come and gone. Which are your feelings about these first 2 years with Memoriam?
Well, yeah, 2 years. What a blast! How
Yeah.
that has flown by in the blink of an eye, basically. Really, it's the initial thing about doing Memoriam in the first place was just really a way to create some joy back in making some music and do something positive. We were in a time in my life where we just lost Martin, and Bolt Thrower were kind of indecisive about what the future was going to be. So everything was a bit very much up in the air, and it was a very grey, dark time for me with my life. I sat back and thought, this is late 2015. What do I really want to do at this point in my life? I'm kind of getting on to 50. What do I want to do? What can I do to do something positive, to create something out of this darkness that I'm in right now? And that's when I thought, right, I want to do a band with my friend Andrew Whale. We had some great times in Bolt Thrower in the early days, when we first started out. He was the reason I joined Bolt Thrower. And so I decided that is the thing that I want to do. So, I got involved. I asked Whale if he'd be up for it. He hadn't played drums for, probably about 10 years. He hadn't picked up a drumstick in anger. And so I didn't even know whether he could play or whether he wanted to do it. So I approached him, asked him if he'd be interested in doing something, really just with the intention of maybe nothing else, just to go into the rehearsal room and maybe do some cover versions of songs that inspired us to want to be in bands when we first started out in the mid 80s. Songs like all the old punk classics, like some Discharge songs, maybe some GBH, and kind of some Crass, Anti-Sect, all those kind of bands that kind of influenced us to want to be in a band and start at the starting point, and just try and get that feeling back, and that feeling of creativity and joy that we had back in those days. I was always going to ask Frank, if ever I was to do something like this, I was always going to ask Frank, because I've known Frank for 30 years. So that was the starting point, back in 2015, just really no more than just to go once a week into the rehearsal room, have a laugh, have a few beers, play some music, and have some fun. And then we got Scott involved, who's a good friend of Frank, through working with Benediction, and he came along to provide some guitar for us. And before we even got to the rehearsal room, before we actually kind of started to end this whole endeavour, we had a meeting, and he said, well, I've got a few riffs that may work, if you have a listen to these and see if you like them, and maybe we could write some of our own original material. We wrote 4 or 5 songs in a period of about 2 or 3 months, and went and recorded them as a demo just so we could have a listen to them and see what they sounded like. Once we kind of put them out for general listening, we kind of got some amazing feedback off people, and that's when Nuclear Blast got involved and offered us an album deal. And such a lot's happened in such a relatively short space of time for us. It's been an amazing journey, and very life affirming, really. It's really we've achieved all the things and more than we expected to do.
Yeah, and the Silent Vigil is a true manifesto of love for the old school sound. How was the process of the composition and the recording of the album?
Right, yeah, that's a really good question. So the first album, For the Fallen, that was a great document of the time, but the songs on that album were very much a product of the feelings we had at that point, lyric-wise and music-wise to a certain extent. It was a product of the sorrow and the mourning process and the grief that we were going through. It was a kind of almost a cathartic exercise, and but I think at that point we were very much still in the shadows of our previous incarnations in bands, Benediction, Bolt Thrower and all that stuff. It took a while to break those chains and move out of those shadows, which I think we successfully achieved with the first album. So this second album is a year on from that. I think the lyrics from my perspective, because I write the lyrics, obviously, are a very different animal. So there's a lot of diversity in this, in the lyrical content on this new album. There's songs about, you know, ideologies and politics and how I feel about the rise of nationalism and you know, racism in the world. Yeah. There's also more personal reflection songs on there, which songs about transition and change, which, you know, we're going through in our lives. Songs about dementia and things like that, which affect me because my mother's got dementia. So there's a lot of different lyrical content within the lyrics, which I'm very, very pleased about. So that's a major step in the right direction. We felt that the last album was great and it's good and it documented the time and it served its purpose. However, there were certain elements of it we weren't entirely satisfied with. We felt to a certain extent it was rather digitalised, maybe in many respects, quite compressed in its sound, which kind of held back the feel of what we were trying to achieve. So with this album, The Silent Vigil, we've tried and we attempted to get more of an organic live sound to what we're recording. So we've used, rather than using digitalized instruments and amps in the studio, we've used real amps, and you can hear the cracks and the bangs and the things like that. We've kept them in intentionally because we wanted that feel to what we were doing. So we've moved on very, very quickly, but the song process, the writing process remains the same, and that's why we can move at such an alarmingly fast pace. We are in a position creatively where we're kind of not tied to any set parameters or formulas that maybe we were with the previous bands that we were in. You know, there was a formula that worked, which was stuck to religiously, and it worked. It was great. However, ultimately, it kind of did hold you back from creating new things because you were working within specific, you know, rules and that. So we try new things. We introduce samples. We try different sounds, different tones, different textures with the songs. I try different. I'm delivering in a slightly different vocal style from how I was previously as well. We're quite experienced as musicians, so we know what we want and we know what kind of works. The structure we have is that Scott comes along with his $1 million riff vault that he's got. Frank, with his experience structuring songs, is good at bridging those riffs and structuring a song, maybe the slower bass parts and the linking sections of a song. Then Whale comes along and puts his signature drum patterns onto to what he's doing, and that's one thing I'd like to mention is I think that Whale's confidence in his drum playing ability has come back, and he's the drumming on this new album is great. It's a really kind of an additional bonus to what we're doing, and that's when I jump in as well. Is once the song is there, I've listened to it being developed and coming together, and that's when I jump in with a song title and a way in with the hook of the song and where the lyrics are going to go. And we'll start working on the next track and the next song and the next thing. And we're already starting to work on new songs towards the third album as well. So it's an amazing, privileged position to be in at this time of our life. And long may it last.
Since the days of Both Thrower, war has been a major theme in your lyrics. Many wars should be added to the lyrics of Through the Ages, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think about war in Memoriam's lyrics as less fictionalized in comparison with the Both Thrower lyrics? Maybe due to the era we're living in?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think that's a real important point to get across. I throughout my career, working with Bolt Thrower 30 years on and off, writing all the, classic albums with all the fantastic songs, which always had a major thematic role. Or war was very central to the theme of the lyrics I always used to write. Obviously the way I used to write was in a kind of like you could, from a third person perspective, they were never glorification of war. They were never kind of like saying war's good and never saying war's bad. It was just about the effects of war, the psychological effects of war. People interpret them how they want as well. So I was very aware of that, and that worked. And that's why I was saying that was the formula for Bolt Thrower, which worked, and we kind of stuck to, which was great, which was great at the time. However, with Memoriam, I feel times have changed. We live in a time where there's a lot more pressing issues in the world around us that are very important. And as an artist, as a musician, as a creative individual, I feel that it's really imperative, really important that I actually make comment on the issues that I think are important, that are affecting my life and the world around us. So I have left, to a certain extent, behind the open meanings and the kind of the subcontext of what I was politically, maybe to a certain extent, writing about in the past, which could have been interpreted, and they have become steadily more overt within the lyrics that I am currently writing, and maybe it's because I'm, as I say, a bit older. Maybe I'm a bit more confident in my ability and more focused, and maybe I just don't give a fuck what other people think so much these days. You know what I mean? Maybe I think that it's my right, if I was to not sing about the things that I think are important in the world, and to bury my head in the sand, and to not get on my soapbox and make social comment, I think I'd be doing myself a massive injustice. I've got kids now, which changes a lot of things. So you do think about the future a lot more, their future. And the first album we did, For the Fallen, it still had, the element of war, but there were a couple of songs on there that were kind of had a fairly deep political context. Corrupted System brings to mind, and Reduced to Zero in particular were written specifically about how I felt about issues that were occurring back then regarding Brexit. We see the rise of fascism and racism. That's kind of like, it's always been there. It's always been there, but it's got a voice. It's very vocal now, and I feel that it's really important to counter that voice with a voice opposing racism and promoting difference and the acceptance of difference. That's what, for me, what makes the world a beautiful place, a good place to live in, is different people with different input and different opinions, kind of like coming together to make something good, rather than philosophies that are based on hatred and philosophies that are based on pushing away people that are different and building walls and isolationism, which Brexit is a big example of that.
Maybe it's just me, but in songs such as Weaponized Fear, I can hear the spirit of the post-punk crust sound of the early 80s in the UK. Which are your memories about those days?
Yeah, well, that's where I come from. That's my my sphere of influence. That's where we come from. That's the thing that drew me into this whole extreme metal thing. That's in the late 80s, the mid 80s. That's the thing that drove me. We always used to go to gigs in the pub in Birmingham, which is called the Mermaid, which is a legendary pub where all the bands, Crass, Antisect, Amoebics, Flux of Pink Indians, all that kind of anarcho-crustcore scene. Then it started being followed up by other bands like Hell Bastard, Ripcord, Sacrilege, Extreme Noise Terror, and of course Napalm Death were the band, the resident house band there that used to kind of play virtually every week. And that little scene is where my ideology comes from, and in a way, doing Memoriam is all about touching base with the roots of where you come from and trying to recreate those feelings that we had when we first started out. And that philosophy and ideology is really important and intrinsic to that part of what we're doing. And that's why I'm going back to these kind of issues, because I think they're really important and they should be more of a pushed forward within what we're doing as a band. And great time. We had some great days back there, and I think the seminal and pivotal point for me as a musician really was at the Mermaid watching Sacrilege play, and I think this must have been about 1980, 86, 87, something like that, watching Sacrilege play there. And that was the point where I thought, yeah, I get this. I want it. This is me. This is me. This is my music. This is how I form my identity through this. And it was at that point where I thought, yeah, I want to be in a band. I want to be a vocalist like Tam. So yeah, it's really that has always been a really important part of my life. And so Memoriam is an extension of that. It's paying tribute to that part of our lives, which is who formed us, who we are, and created our identity as individuals. And we want to take that forward and use that to within the music we're creating now. I think it's really important to draw references to the past to make sense of where we're at now in our lives. And as I say, we're very aware of musical heritage as well. We're very proud of the music we created with the bands we were in previously, Bolt Thrower, Benediction, all those bands, and we always will be very proud and privileged to have been involved in those bands. But we've got to leave that behind. And but we do pay tribute to that, and you'll find reference to, I'll throw in the occasional Bolt Thrower line in some of the lyrics there, which people do spot and kind of and understand. But as you say, that track you mentioned there, Weaponized Fear, that's kind of almost got a kind of hypnotic kind of energy to it, which we're trying to. We've drawn that specifically referencing a band called Killing Joke, which are probably one of the major influences on me and one of my favourite bands. But again, the lyrical content is all about the media and the way it manipulates people, and the way that fear is used to kind of like make you act in specific ways and controls you, as it says in the lyrics. So yeah, we're very proud. I think it's a great way to end the album as well. That song, it kind of like it sticks in your head, and you end up humming it in your head when you're least expecting it in the middle of the night.
And what shall we expect from your future live shows?
Yeah, hopefully some gigs in bloody Italy.
Yeah, God damn it!
that'll be nice. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've been doing this on and off for 30 years, and our experience of playing in Italy has been pretty fucking disastrous, really. I think we had 3 scheduled shows once with Bolt Thrower. One of them fell apart because the electricity in the venue failed, and everyone was getting electric shocks when they were doing the sound check, which we thought was probably not, the best thing to carry on with doing, so we had to withdraw. Then we did Bassano da Grappa. I remember playing Bassano da Grappa, which was in the foothills of the Alps, which was beautiful. But we've had very limited contact with Italy, and I regret that massively, because I love Italy. I love the Italian culture, and I'm a big fan of scooters and things like Lambretta and Vespa. They're very, very close to my heart. So yeah, I have a real connection to Italy, and I'd love to do some shows there. So if you can kind of assist us in the process of getting some shows in Italy, that would be fantastic. All I want to do is say thank you for everyone that's supported us throughout our fantastic journey in life. It's been an absolute pleasure to this point, and we're just really enjoying what we're doing, and having this opportunity to do this is such a special thing. Hopefully we'll get to meet up with you guys, on a closer footing, and get to play in your beautiful country at some point in the future.